Hello, I'm Tony Parsons, and welcome to the Tony Parsons Show. As a news broadcaster and journalist for the past 50 years, I've reported on the major news events that have shaped our nation. I've interviewed prime ministers, premiers, thought leaders, and other people of distinction from around the world. My goal with this interview series is to help you, my audience, discover the person behind the credentials, while at the same time, I'll invite them to share their professional insights, experiences, and aspirations. To say that I've been looking forward to this episode would be an understatement. Many of you know that I served as a news broadcaster for some 35 years with BCTV's NewsHour, which later was acquired by the Global Television Network. I'm proud to say that the NewsHour on Global BC became the second most watched local television newscast in North America. However, none of that would have been possible if it wasn't for the talented people I was privileged to work with. Today, I'm honored to welcome my guests, my former colleagues and good friends, former news anchor Pamela Martin, former news director Cameron Bell, and Wayne Cox, the very popular weatherman. Welcome to the show, everyone. This is a long-awaited reunion. I wish Squire Barnes could have joined us, but he has other commitments. These are my friends from, it seems such a long time ago when we first got together. And for me, it was almost 50 years ago that the NewsHour became a reality for me. And eventually, Pamela Martin got involved, and so did Wayne Cox. And of course, there's Cameron Bell, who I consider to be one of the architects of the NewsHour. Cameron, bring us up to date on that. You were one of the, I use the word architect because I think that works. Tell us what you were doing, what you were thinking, how you were putting all this together in those formative days.
I'm trying to remember. It started 2 weeks after they had made the decision at BCTV to try to do an hour-long evening news program. It hadn't been done anywhere in the country. CBC had a model of something that was half newscast and half what they called public affairs. Yeah, that was different from news somehow. Wasn't ever explained. So I was 2 weeks into it. I was there and starting to learn the craft of television news along with 4 or 5 other people. We had a very small staff, and we were doing an hour a day with enough material to last 20 minutes. And I was given the responsibility of figuring out what to do next. And I started in the beginning of the year in, I think it was 1968 or 9. What I was thinking at the time was, how could we make a dent in the ratings of Walter Cronkite, to whom I wrote a letter and asked. Got a reply, which basically said, I'm sorry it's taken so long to respond to your interesting question, but with space shops and other things, I don't have time. And the letter from Cronkite said, closing, I'm going to do something most abhorrent, which is ask my secretary to sign this for me. So he wasn't even going to risk a signature. Anyway, that didn't help, so I had to figure it out myself, along with Alan Plopp, the original producer, and I guess the first 2 or 3 reporters.
Are you talking about guys like Arden Ostrander?
Arden was among the first, Dale Hicks, and shortly thereafter, Keith Morrison.
Well, there's a name everyone would recognize, Keith Morrison, and now has a huge following because he's with, I think, NBC News, isn't he, in the States?
Dateline,
yeah. Mm.
Yeah. And other people include Chuck Davis was an early reporter and the guy who began experimenting with what we used to call features because we couldn't figure another name.
Were you the anchor on the show when it first went to air?
Oh, yeah, initially. Yeah. That's what the standards were initially. Yeah,
Uh, you,
I was there first.
no. Wait a minute. You were good at what you did, and you were good in radio, which you did before you did television, as most of us did. But I remember one thing. You were a traffic reporter for CKNW, I believe, and I've heard this tape on replay that you were out doing your regular daily traffic report, and then there became silence. And it was because you had gotten yourself into a traffic accident. Do you remember that?
Oh, very well. Quite vividly, actually. The accident occurred at the corner of, I think it was Hornby and Nelson. And everybody who saw it was sure that I had run the red light. I'd gone into the intersection too early, where I T-boned a very expensive car. I can't remember the model of it right now. But anyhow, I went back to the station with the tail between my legs and feeling that terrible things would happen. And there had been a number of telephone calls, people who wanted to volunteer that they saw what happened and it was my fault. And finally a guy phoned and said, I saw the accident and it wasn't your fault. You were within the bounds of the red light. You're okay. And I asked him if he would sign a letter to that effect. I think that's what we were asked to get. And he said yes, he would. And by the way, he was the safety supervisor at BC Hydro. So I was
exonerated.
Yeah. Well, I was working for WX.
Oh, it's WX, yeah. Okay.
CKWX.
I don't really know a lot about you before your career in broadcasting began. So can you take us back to your younger days, your family days, share a bit of your upbringing?
Sure.
Okay. Where did it all begin?
I was born in Vancouver General Hospital. So that makes me a real Vancouverite. Not a lot of people can claim. But I was born there and raised on Vancouver Island by a mother and father who felt that Vancouver in the post-war was going to be too rough as a port town. And they wanted a more genteel place to raise their child, which was me. There weren't any others. And so I was there until the end of high school on Vancouver Island and moved back into Vancouver to go to UBC, which I didn't do well. I was much more interested in the realities of the radio society at UBC and found I had a lot more time for that than for studying. So I only stayed at UBC for a year and a half, 2 years. And I got into radio on the island, worked my way through a little bit of Victoria and Nanaimo and Courtney, Kamloops, and then got a lucky break and got on with Seafung when it was just starting to be a rock and roll. Was just experimenting really with rock and roll and top 40. And was there in Vancouver market for 10 years and got fed up with a couple of things and decided that I wanted to change and was on the phone making phone calls thinking I'd like to change and got a call from Andy Markey, who was the news director at Chan TV, BC TV. So I started there in, I guess it was 1950. I'll have to work on that.
Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to remember these things. I mean, you and I are not young guys. I mean, this goes way back. And sometimes, but I'm wondering, in your family life, how did your mom and dad influence what you decided to do eventually? Did they give you advice? Did they say, you don't want to be a broadcaster? Why don't you be a lawyer? Did they say anything like that?
Yeah, you'd like to be a mechanical engineer with the prompting I got. But I do have a recollection, at the age of maybe 4 or 5 years old, when I was waiting for my father to come home at the end of his workday at the CPR, where he was a telegraph operator. And he came home and sat down and listened to the war news, which I think was on CKNW or CKWX or possibly CBC. But anyhow, I interrupted him and was told to hush. And I formed the idea that the one thing that was more important than me in my father's eyes was the radio on which he got his war story. And it had left an imprint. And I think that's what motivated me to explore radio and see what I could do.
I'm going to move along to one of our other guests, somebody who's well known.
Please.
Pamela, fill us in on your background. You were an American. Are you still an American? Are you a dual citizen?
I am a dual citizen. Yeah. Canadian and American, but I was born outside of Detroit, near you, kind of, because you were from Sarnia, Ontario, right?
Right.
Well, you lived there, coming from England, but grew up outside of Detroit. It was a great place to live and grow up. It was thriving. The auto industry was booming, and there was lots of hope and optimism. And I had a great family, a mother and father who were very dedicated parents, and brothers and sister, and a great life.
Did you get a lot of parental guidance? Did they tell you what they expected of you or what you should be doing with the rest of your life? Was it like that for you?
It really wasn't, Tony. I was lucky because I was born at a time when really it was okay. If you were a girl, you could just get married and have children, and that would be a big success. The boys, no, entirely different. They had to have, serious career and, earn a lot of money. So it was easy for me because I could just do as I said, just get married and have children, or I could pursue a career. But for me, I never considered the just staying at home, raising kids. I always wanted to have adventures out in the world. And I guess it was a pretty adventurous thing when I married a Canadian. And I was probably the only one who ever thought that a Canadian was exotic, but he was. And lumberjack, he wore the black and red jacket, and what can I tell you? And we moved to Ontario, and then shortly after that to British Columbia. Mm-hmm. And so but my parents always said, you can do whatever you want to do. Whatever you want to pursue, the world is yours, whatever effort you want to make. And they sent me to school in Mexico. I went to school in Italy. I learned Italian and Spanish. And, I really saw a lot of the world, and then ended up in Vancouver and loved it and never went back. Became a Canadian.
You haven't mentioned it. You didn't mention it, but you became Miss Teen USA. At one time. It's not a blemish on your record,
Well, honestly, I've spent quite a few years being embarrassed about it because people were kind of down on beauty pageants, and so they should be if they're emphasizing the wrong thing, which they kind of do. You can't help it. But they also do give people scholarships, and they encourage university, and many these days, it's helpful. You win lots of money, and you can go to school, become a doctor, astronaut, whatever you want to do. For me, it was just another adventure. It was just like, I wonder what that would be like. And actually it was really fun. I traveled all over the US. I went to Japan. I gave a lot of speeches, and I think it did sort of actually help me career-wise, because it gave me a lot of experience, just being in front of an audience, and, learned a lot along the way of doing that. But then I I became a feminist, and I didn't tell anyone for a few years. No, I'm fine with it. Yeah, it was very fun.
How did you get into journalism, though?
Well, I was in university when Watergate was happening, and I was absolutely fascinated by it. I ended up reading every book written about it. I read the newspaper every single day, followed it so closely. And, it was such a romanticization, I'm sure, of these two cub reporters who brought a president down and, had these fabulous journalism careers. And I think people all across North America became journalists because of them, because of that story. And that was what inspired me. So I had this idea. And when I came to Vancouver, I actually went to Victoria first. I ended up applying to different TV stations. I think there were two, and radio
Yes.
stations, and trying to get into the business, thinking, I don't have experience as a reporter, but I'm going to work really hard. And I got a break. I got a break in Victoria at Czech TV. I wasn't a reporter. I was hosting a show with Bruce Payne.
Mhm.
It was a little Canada AM local segment of Canada AM on CTV. And, I stayed for about a year there and then came to CKW radio. So you were mentioning earlier that I think all of us did start in radio, including me, and loved it. It was an incredible experience. I worked out of the police station. It was right downtown in a gritty part of town, and had lunch at the Ovaltine Cafe every day, and really experienced and went out on all the police stories and union stories and local politics in Vancouver, and it was just a great education on how to be a reporter.
Now, Wayne Cox has been with me before on this broadcast. One of the best TV weathermen I've ever known, and I've known, maybe two.
That's high praise.
What about your childhood? What was it like?
Well, I was really surprised to hear Cameron say he was born at VGH, because I was too.
Oh.
And I remember, maybe you remember broadcaster Bob Spence, who was a couple of years older than I was. And we were both born there, and we said, it's a rare thing in the city of Vancouver to find someone our age who is actually born here. Most people are coming from somewhere else. But no, I VGH, and then became a Dunbar kid. Grew up in the Dunbar area, which at the time was very blue collar. I mean, the homes there now, these little homes that are hundreds of years old, they're going for millions of dollars. Well, in those days, I think my mom and dad paid $12,000 for the house or something. But we moved up and down 24th Avenue. We started at 24th and Blenheim. We went up to 24th and Dunbar, and then we ended up at 24th and Balaclava. And a pretty normal childhood. I was the only child until I was 6 years old. My sister was born, and then another sister 3 years after that. And it was a pretty normal kind of thing, I played Little League baseball, played soccer, and then went on to high school. And it's funny, much like Cameron, school wasn't really an attraction for me, shall we say. And I was lured away by radio. And I had a fascination for television, watched all of, the talk shows and that kind of thing. And I read where Johnny Carson started his career in radio. And I thought, oh, so that's how you get in there. So, yeah, went through, about a dozen years as a disc jockey. And then television reared its ugly head. And I grabbed onto that after doing a couple of TV commercials at BCTV, as a matter of fact. Barry Thompson, who was the promotions guy and also was in charge of commercials, called me one day when I was working at CKNW and said, "Hey, we've got this trailer commercial, travel trailer. Would you be interested?" And I thought, well, I've never done TV, so I want to take a crack at that. And that's when I got bitten. But that was after a year in Quesnel and a year and a half in Kamloops radio station, and CKNW for 7 years, and then bounced around to a bunch of different radio stations, WX and CJOR, and then got into, I was again at BCTV filling in on the weather reports for Fred Latrimo, who was the weatherman at the time, in between Norm coming and going, Norm Grolman. And so I sort of tiptoed around BCTV for quite some time, and kind of had a different experience perhaps than you or Pamela or Cameron, in that I've been on both sides of the window. I've been with my nose pressed against the glass, dying to get in there, and then also having the good fortune to be hired there full time. And so I got on the other side of the glass, and that was way more fun.
I always thought that being a weatherman on a television broadcast was a license to be comedic. And maybe you agree with me. You're wearing a shirt now that became your trademark, a Hawaiian shirt.
A famous Hawaiian shirt.
Yeah, it went over really well. And you were able to tell a few jokes and things like that. Is that how you looked at what you did?
I looked at it as entertainment and information, or information and a little bit of entertainment. I kind of took a cue from Norm Grolman, in that Norm was serious, but he was crazy, like he
one way to say it. Yeah.
Well, Halloween, when he would dress up, and I talked to him once about that, and he says, I do that more for myself than for the audience. He says, if I was just to play it straight, he said, I'd be bored to death. And I thought, well, that's true. So kind of, he was obviously giving the information, but he was entertaining people too. Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, if I can interject just a little bit of entertainment, the news can be so heavy at times. And for just a little bit of relief for the audience before you plow back into some more stories, I thought, well, not a comedian, but if it can make it light, bright, and trite, but also give the information, maybe it's a good service. Oh, and by the way, the Hawaiian shirt, that was your fault. You know that.
Whoa, what happened?
Well, what happened was...
Did I wear one?
No, but the person in charge of sending the weather guy outside somewhere, wherever that came from, I don't know. But it drove me crazy. Like, if you want to know what it's like outside, look out the window, people. You don't.
We're good at it, Wayne.
You don't need me to be. You don't need me to be out in the rain to know it's raining. So anyway, they sent me down to Kitts Beach the very first time, and I said, Kitts Beach? Oh no, what am I going to wear? I'm not going to wear a blazer, and a dress shirt, and stand around on the beach. So I dug out in the closet the most hideous Hawaiian shirt that I don't even know where it came from, a thrift store probably. And so I thought, this is it. Oh, I'll wear this. So down I went. You introduced me, and you turned to the screen, and now let's go down to Kitts Beach, and here's what have you got on? You were horrified. And I thought, he's horrified. Perfect. Tomorrow night, I'm going to have an even worse shirt. And so that's how it all started, because I got a reaction from you, and I thought, oh, perfect. Well, I'll have to just needle Parsons a little bit here with another one.
Well, I was
you have one.
At the height, 120, and most of them were Tommy Bahamas, which ain't a cheap shirt, and but it was the wardrobe expense account. So Mr. BCTV and Mr. Global were paying for them, right?
It's a lot more than Don Ho had, I think.
Yeah. But I've lost a few because some people, not many people anymore, but when I was wearing them all the time, a lot of people would ask if I would donate to a charity auction or something, and maybe sign the back of the shirt or something. So I did that a number of times. So the actual number now is probably dropped into the 90s, maybe.
Oh my God.
I know you're retired, quotation marks, but what is retirement to you? What are you doing? I know you can't sit still very long. So what are you doing?
Well, again, I was fortunate. Here in White Rock, we have a place called Blue Frog Studios, and it's a recording studio by day during the week, and then occasionally on a Thursday night, but certainly on a Friday night, Saturday, sometimes Sunday, they'll put on concerts, and a lot of those tribute acts, but also people like Jim Burns and Valdy and Randy Bachman has played there. And I went there one time with a friend. I had never heard of the place before, and it seats 100 people. It's got a beautiful big stage, lighting, and of course the acoustics are perfect because it's a recording studio. And I sat there and I go, oh, I love live music, and this was a great venue. And when we left, I talked to the owner, Kelly Briggs, and I said, hey, if your MC guy is ever sick or he takes a vacation, I'm not doing anything. I love live music and I love this. And he said, oh, that'd be great. He said, but it doesn't pay very much. I said, well, I'm not looking for payment. He said, well, I'll tell you what. He says, the deal is you get 2 free tickets to the concert and 2 drink tickets. And I said, where do I sign? That's the best deal I've ever had. So
I wish I'd have known that when we hired you as a weatherman.
Yeah. No, so I then the next day he sent me this list of upcoming concerts, and he said, check off the ones you like and come on in. And so I greet the people and do a little, housekeeping things, and then introduce the band. And the band comes on. When the band's over, I get up there and thank the people for coming and see you next time, drive safely. And I can do that as often as I want. So then the owners came to me, Kelly and Juanita, and they said, look, we've got these subscribers where we send out information of upcoming concerts. And we do that every Thursday. But we want to keep in touch with these subscribers, but we want to do it in such a way that we're not trying to sell tickets. How about if you write a column every week? And I said, a column? A column about what? They said, well, anything. And I said, well, I'm not a writer. And they said, yeah, but you've got good stories. And I said, well, the fact that I have good stories doesn't make me a writer. So they said, well, look, give it a try once a week. And if you don't like it, fine, we don't care. So I've now done 95 of these things, and I've got another 30 sitting in the bank, and I'm really enjoying it. It's a good mental exercise, and it's mostly reminiscing about the past, and going to White Spot in high school, and people I've met and people I've interviewed and things like that. And it seems to be going over fairly well. So, but I'm going to run out one day, and and that's maybe when I become a fiction author and start making stuff up. But it's been good. That and a little bit of golf and going to the gym, and that's about it.
Yeah. How do we access this column? Where do we go to get it?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering too.
Oh,
How do I get my name on that list?
Well, let's see. It's all one word, bluefrogstudios.ca. Go there, and then it'll come up with upcoming concerts, But I think if you scroll to the bottom of the page, and there'll be somewhere that says subscribe, or if you want newsletters or whatever, and then part of that subscription you'll just automatically get, and it's called The Word. And you can click on, if you just want to sample it, you can go to that website, bluefrogstudios.ca, and there'll be a pull down thing, and you click on The Word, and it has all the words I've done. So it's archived, and if you could sample it. Yeah, it's good fun.
Pamela, you took a different tact when you got out of the television business. You were on the fringe of politics now here in British Columbia. Tell us how that happened.
Well, I was leaving CTV, and it just so happened the timing was great because there was the leadership contest for the BC Liberal Party. And while I had never been involved politically at all, in fact, I didn't even vote in Canada because I think you had this same philosophy, Tony, that it was better not to have any investment in the outcome. You knew that you would be fair and objective. But once I left journalism, I actually loved politics and wanted to be involved. And I knew Christy, so I volunteered to help her. I thought she would be a good leader and she would be the first woman to be elected if she was elected, and which she was. And, it just seemed like an exciting new adventure. And it was. She won. She hired me to work in her office. That was a bit of a tricky transition. Some people were negative, thinking that somehow it was unfair, that, that I was taking a position, but needless to say, I wasn't a journalist anymore, so I felt it was fair. And I really enjoyed it. It was really fascinating. And then I worked for the party. So in total, I worked for almost 7 years for the BC Liberal and Christy Clark government. And it was just really, really exciting and interesting. Very different than being a journalist, because now instead of looking for the story, you kind of are creating the story. And it's such a muddle now. And I'm really sad to see this happening. But, Tony, the Social Credit Party, whatever happened to them? At least this is how it goes. I don't know why exactly the BC United has now collapsed. And I'm sure there will be people analyzing it for a long time in the future, figure out what happened. But, I just think that it's really unfortunate because it's so close to an election. So I don't know what will happen. I don't think anyone does. Will BC United voters go to the NDP? Will they go to the BC Conservatives? The sad part is there's a lot of candidates now who will kind of be left out of the election or be an independent, which is very challenging. And there's a lot of people that just don't know where they belong anymore. And I don't know. I guess we'll have to see what happens. Kind of shocking. I was shocked.
Most people were.
Yeah. I understand it was like a meeting on Tuesday night and a few people were there. Wednesday morning, they got the directors of the party together. They had a meeting. They said, okay, that's what you want to do. And then Kevin announced it with John Rustad. So very, very interesting.
You're going back to the U.S., to Georgia, to do what?
Well, I want to be a part of this great movement to elect the first woman president of the United States, Kamala Harris. I want to be a part of that campaign. And, I don't know what I'll be doing exactly, but I have family there, so it's not a big stretch for me, and it is a swing state. So I'm really excited. I'll be doing whatever they need me to do. And, I think it's kind of like the Obama 2008 when people were just really excited about this new candidate. It's a very short campaign, so she's, got to work fast and have people get to know her. But we've got the debate and hopefully more than one. So I think, I don't know. We'll see what happens, but I'm excited by it. So I couldn't resist.
Well, keep us posted. Let us know how it goes. I wish you luck.
I will. Thank you. Yeah.
So, Wayne, do you follow politics on television? Do you watch the Trump-Harris goings on in the States?
I just don't understand the United States of America, how they can sit back and allow a convicted felon to run for the presidency of the United States. It's just beyond me. Just from that alone, I just shake my head and I say, what are these people doing? What is the matter here?
Yeah.
And no matter what he says or what he does, he keeps on keeping on. I'm like you. I'm totally amazed.
it's the same. He's got the same old dance again, and people, not all people, obviously, but his followers are just buying it all over again. And I sometimes I sometimes get angry at the media for paying any attention to this guy. He hooked them in once, he hooked them in the second time, and now for the third time, he's hooked the American media into covering his lies, his boastfulness. I, I don't know. So I shake my head at the media down there, just saying, okay, yeah, maybe you're going to get a few viewers because you've got this clown on the air. I don't know, but it's not worth it.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I agree for the sake of the country, but I guess from the media point of view, it's like a train wreck. You know, nobody wants to see it, but everyone's watching. You can't look away, so no one's looking away. They are, their success right now in many ways is based on him being a crazy clown.
Yeah, it's so sad. Yeah.
Cameron, I wonder now, you having had anchor experience and being the news director, do you miss all of that after retirement or the end of your...
Well, on election night, for example, I miss being in the process of that delivered to the editors and whatnot. But by and large, no, I don't say. I don't think I really do miss it. I admire you guys like you who can behave in public.
Don't be too sure of that.
But I don't think I miss it now, no. And I certainly don't miss what they do. Some of the, it's an odd sort of job now. It's not a craft that I recognize.
We had an event fairly recently whereby we talked about the NewsHour in a public situation. And Pamela was there and said to everyone who was listening, I looked on the NewsHour as a family event. I thought we were a family. And I wonder if either one of you felt that way.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd call it a family or not. I think they were a bunch of dedicated pros. Everybody there had a purpose, and I think they were proud to be part of it. I don't know why I'm reluctant to call it a family, but it's not wrong.
That's a good observation, yeah. Wayne?
Yeah, I think I agree with both Cameron and Pamela on this one. Yeah, there was a feeling of family in a way that you knew that these people you worked with were so good that if something were to go wrong, they'd have your back because they were so good. Mm-hmm. And so it became sort of a family company. But I just really enjoyed the people I worked with. I can't think of one person throughout the years, and I think I was there 20 years, something like that. But I can't think of one person that I didn't really enjoy working with and enjoy being a friend with. And I can't say that for all of my family,
I didn't hear that.
We can, yeah. But no, it was a wonderful experience, and it's I played a lot of sports, and it's an awful lot of fun to be on the number one team. You can't get much better than that. It's a great feeling.
And I recall moments after the NewsHour, some nights when we would all go and have a drink together or have a meal together. It was kind of fun, and to me, it was family. Wayne, do you have something to add to this?
And maybe I can just turn it around a little bit and turn it on to you, Tony, because let's ask you, what ways does podcasting differ from what you did most of your life, which was anchoring the news?
Well, I guess it's a little more freewheeling than what we were doing together back in the days of our time on NewsHour. This is a collaboration. Mike Peterson, Our producer, sound guy, puts time in, as does Dan Whitney, my manager. I mean, when I first started thinking about a podcast, my response to people who said, "What are you doing these days?" And I would say, "I'm doing a podcast. Isn't everybody?" And that's what it felt like to me, that, I was getting into a fairly crowded field. So my decision had to be, what do you want from this? And my answer would be, I want to give people entertainment and I want to give them information. And I think that's what we're doing.
Yeah. And you're doing it really well. And
So I guess this kind of wraps up your first season.
It does.
This particular edition. So you look back on that inaugural year, and what do you think's been the most rewarding aspect of that year of podcasting?
I think the sense that you're still involved in what you were doing years ago, and you're contributing, and again, you're entertaining. You have an audience, big or small. I think it's a very self-satisfying thing for me to sit here with you guys and talk like this, have this conversation. And I think it was something that you wouldn't get if someone hadn't created the podcast. And I'm thankful they did.
Well, thank you for including us in this podcast. And I've really enjoyed it. And what do you think listeners can look forward to in season 2? Any ideas on the show?
Well, we're reaching out to almost anyone that is making news right at the moment. Not hard news, not political news. I'm a little fed up with that after what we've been through in the last year. All I want to do is to inform and entertain, and if we can do that, then we'll go wherever. We will probably come back to you. By then you'd have formed new ideas. And you may not like me. I don't know. It's good.
Oh, we'll always like you, Tony.
I think that there's a room for an ongoing forum of people involved or interested in any particular podcast, fishing or anything. Just pick a subject, and over time you could winnow an audience that is aimed at that particular subject. I think that podcasting is just beginning, and the self-selecting of the audience. I think it's got real potential, and I commend you for finding a way in.
Thank you. I have to wrap this up because we're running out of time, and I want to thank the three of you for being here. It's been great fun for me, and it's been great to see you. And maybe we can do more again sometime, I hope. I don't know where you are all going in your endeavors next, but I wish you well, and I send you my love. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tony.
Yeah, great to see you guys.
Thank you, Tony. It was good fun.
Thank you for tuning in to The Tony Parsons Show, recorded and produced by Mike Peterson at 85 Audio in Kelowna, British Columbia. To learn more about today's guest, please visit our website at thetonyparsonsshow.com. You can reach Tony directly via email at info@thetonyparsonsshow.com. If you're enjoying the podcast, we would greatly appreciate your support. Please consider leaving us a 5-star rating or review on your streaming platform of choice. We hope you've loved Season 1 of The Tony Parsons Show. Season 2 will be back soon, and we can't wait to dive into more great conversations with you.